Welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. We're just going to give it one more minute to make sure that everyone who is joining the call today can finish logging on, because it sometimes takes a minute. So I think we'll start when we tick over to four or 5 minutes past. But welcome and thank you very much for giving up your time to be with us today. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. So as I said, thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time, and welcome to this East West Railway Company webinar session, focusing on the area from Clapham Green to the Eversdens. Firstly, I'll start with an apology. So for those of you who joined last week, we did have a session on Thursday morning that was cut short. We had some technical problems. Some people were unable to see or hear the presentation, and a decision was taken to end the session early. For those of you that were at that session, I do apologise. That was, as I say, a brief technical issue which we've now fixed. And I hope that this new session that we've put in today, and also the additional session that we've put in tomorrow evening, will make up for that and enable you to have the full presentation and to engage with the team. So again, thank you very much for joining us. So following the launch of the second round of non-statutory consultation on the 31st of March, we've been holding sessions with parish councils, councillors and communities along the whole route for East West Rail, and we wanted to specifically hold sessions with you where we just explain in more detail, and we have all of our experts on the line as well to explain in more detail the proposals in your area. We do have a question and answer session on the side, although I will say that we do have live chat sessions booked in across the course of the consultation too. That's a really fantastic opportunity for you to have a more discursive one-on-one conversation with our experts. The nature of these meetings means they're a little bit more transmit, they're a little bit us sort of presenting information, and then we have these, as I say, these fantastic live chat sessions where you can ask us things in more detail. We'll be holding, and we have been holding, similar sessions with communities across the route. So we'll start this session with a presentation that will run for about 25 to 30 minutes, followed by a 25 to 30 minute Q&A, where we'll answer as many questions as we can that come in through the chat. If we don't manage to get to those questions, we will take them away and look into them. So we should be done within the hour. My name's Hannah Staunton. I'm Head of External Affairs for the East West Railway Company, and I'll just briefly introduce the rest of the team that I've got with me today. So joining today, we've got Ian Parker, who's our Delivery Director. We've got Maria Cliff, our Head of Operations. Paul Sparrow, our Programme Manager for this section of the route. Jorn Pace, our Land and Property Manager. John Worthington, our Construction Director, Gavin Sams, our Environment and Sustainability Manager, and Martin Phillips, our Head of Customer Strategy. We've also got colleagues from a supporting agency who are in the background taking notes and working through the technical aspects of the slides and whatnot. If they haven't already, the team's going to switch off their cameras because it saves a little bit of room on the video screen. And as they're not talking, which will give us a little bit more room. So many of you might already be familiar with this format, but just to make sure, the participants will be muted during the call, just so that we can make sure that there's no background noise and we can concentrate on what's happening. However, please do take advantage of the question section in the Q&A bar, which will be coming up on the right hand side of your screen. One of our colleagues there is looking at that and will bring up questions as we come through. Please be advised that we'll be grouping those questions together. So if you don't hear the exact wording that you've put down in some of the questions, we're just going to try and group them so that we're getting the most frequently asked questions first. Also, we will try and avoid using people's names and whatnot, because not everyone's comfortable with their names being used in the circumstance. So be aware that we're thinking about that from a GDPR issue as well. If you experience any technical issues during the meeting, if you email contact@eastwestrail.co.uk, they'll try and let you back in, but I hope the fact that you're in now means that you're going to be here for a while. And we will, yeah, as I said, we'll aim to get through all the questions that we possibly can. So that's all the housekeeping that we had. So on with the presentation. What we're going to cover today, we'll cover an introduction to the consultation. We'll cover what we're consulting on, which is we'll go into some detail with our technical teams there, and then how you can get involved. We'll put a Q&A in after how you can get involved, and then we'll talk about the next step, so how you can give feedback to the consultation, how that feedback will work. So what are we consulting on? Well, we've got a 10-week consultation, which is an opportunity for people across the whole route to give us their thoughts on emerging proposals for East West Rail and give us their views on the wider scheme. So the consultation covers two following sort of key sections, really. One is the customer experience and railway operations, so how people using the railway want it to look and feel. And also the proposed infrastructure development. Now, with the session that we've got today has been based on that second part, so people with an interest in the similar areas of infrastructure development, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. The consultation zone, which will be popping up in a minute, is broadly the area in which we have sort of focused promotion of the consultation. So this is around 2 kilometres either side of the central line, and we've just made some accommodations around the edges to make sure communities have kind of been pulled in. So this represents the people to whom we've sent information directly during the consultation, but absolutely anyone can join in, and absolutely anyone with an interest in the railway should be encouraged to participate in this consultation. We've got 6 key sections in the consultation document, 6 key areas of infrastructure that we're looking at. So the section that we're looking at mainly today would be section D, which is Clapham Green to the Eversdens, but we've got the other parts here that we're going through, and these are broadly speaking the areas that we've been talking to people in when we go through. But the area we're looking at today is that yellow box, Clapham Green to the Eversdens. But at this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Martin Phillips, who's our head of customer strategy, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the first part of that consultation I was talking about. So Martin, I think at this point, it's over to you.
Thank you, Hannah. So as Hannah has introduced me, I'm Martin Phillips. I'm head of customer strategy, East West Rail. So this part of our consultation focuses on what customers want from the actual railway experience. So whether customers are using the new service to get to work, for education, to visit friends, or just for simple leisure activities, we're really interested in people's views. We want to hear your views of what's important to you. And this is with us aiming to set a new standard for customer, and understanding your views help us design in capability from the very start that helps us achieve that experience. So as you'll see on the next slide, there are some particular points where we're really interested to hear your views. And we are considering the customer experience on what we're calling an end-to-end journey perspective. So that's right from where a customer explores the need to travel, right the way through the specific rail stages, stations and trains, and right the way through to post-travel and getting people's feedback. But particular sections that we're asking questions are the actual train service itself, stopping patterns, the service specification and integration into onward travel, the station experience, so what facilities, how people want to interact with the stations, the on-train experience, of course, and how that works for people. Interactions with colleagues and staff is really important. We know that from our research, and we'd like to hear people's thoughts on customer information. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martin. So my name's Ian Parker. I'm the Programme Delivery Director for East West Rail. And I guess my responsibility is to make sure that we find the right design solution, one that best meets the needs of the customers of the railway, your needs as a community, and obviously, of course, our business case. And also, I'm responsible for making sure that we construct the scheme in a way that's least harmful to the environment and most affordable for the taxpayer and most cost effective So in this presentation, if we can go to the next slide, please. What we're talking about is the section of the scheme between Clapham Green near Bedford and the Eversdens to the southeast of Cambridge. We're not taking you to the two very ends of the scheme in Bedford, because these are common to all the alignments which we're showing you today. But all the alignments for the railway that we've presented at this consultation are based around the criteria that we set for route option E, which was consulted upon, if some of you remember, back in 2019. And the publication of the plans for the A428 Black Cat to Caxton Gibbet by Highways England after our previous consultation meant that we were keen to look at ways in which our transport corridor could align with theirs for road and rail. So the result of that is that some of our alignments fall slightly outside the option E area, but we felt, and I'm sure you'll agree, that it's in the public interest to consider these alongside alignments which do fall wholly within those boundaries. So on the next slide, what we can see are some of the many alignments that we've considered over the last 12 months since that last consultation. What we've done is narrow them down from 9 shortlisted alignments to a further shortlist of 5, and those are the 5 that are shown on this slide. And what we're trying to do is look at the best performing alignments that connect new stations at Thamesford and St Neots with new stations around Camborne, either to the north of Camborne or the south. And the station options we've considered for St Neots and Thamesford all provide connectivity for passengers between East West Rail and the East Coast Main Line. And just to be clear, the proposal at St Neots is for an entirely new station. Don't confuse it with the existing station in the town. And at Camborne, we've considered station options both to the north and the south of the settlement to serve the community in the best possible way. Our preference is for a station to the north of the settlement and close to the A428, because when we've looked at this from a housing potential perspective, it's best able to meet future housing needs. And really, for a railway that's designed to connect people and connect communities, that's quite important for us. So in our consultation documents, we've identified as our emerging 2 preferences, 2 alignments which we think best meet the needs of the business case and the communities. And these, as you'll have seen from our documents, are alignments 1 and 9. So that's the blue alignment and the purple alignment. And as you'll also see, both of these follow the route of Highways England's new scheme between Black Cat Roundabout and Caxton Gibbet, and both centre on the station to the north of Camborne. How they differ is that alignment 1 crosses the A1 trunk road immediately to the north of the Black Cat Roundabout, very close to that roundabout, and will have a station near St Neots, whereas alignment 9 crosses the A1 further south near Thamesford and has a station at Thamesford. But you know, both of these are viable options, and in part the choice of future alignment is going to depend on your views and indeed, you know, where future development is going to take place. So in the next few slides, I'm going to take you through each of the 5 shortlisted options in more detail. They're not in numeric order, but I think probably the way we've presented them makes it a little easier to explain. So I'm going to start with alignment 2 on this slide, which when you leave Bedford on this alignment, you swing east to pass north of Ravensden and Roxton. We then build a viaduct between Black Cat Roundabout and the East Coast Main Line, and obviously also crossing the river Great Ouse. And as I said before, we'd provide a station on the East Coast Main Line, which would be to the south of St Neots. And then from there, the alignment would follow the route of the proposed A428 scheme, northeasterly, and it would swing south across this scheme to reach a station which would be south and west of Camborne. Again, you know, we'd need a viaduct section to cross the railway over the A428 at that point. And then the alignment would continue southeasterly towards the common section of the scheme, which begins at Little Eversden. If we move on to the next alignment, alignment 1. So this starts off on the same alignment as alignment 2 as it leaves Bedford. Again, it crosses the A1 and the East Coast Main Line on viaduct. And again, it provides a new station to the south of St Neots. But in this case, our proposal is to follow again the route of the A428 scheme, but continue into a station north of Camborne rather than south. As you can imagine, we're already talking to Highways England about these alignments. They've just submitted, as I'm sure you know, a development consent order application for their scheme. I think that was in February. And so we've already carried out quite a lot of consultation on this route, and hopefully will benefit from what they've already done. So we're building on their knowledge, we're building on their survey work, and what we're trying to do is to ensure that any scheme that we propose would minimise any sort of cumulative environmental impacts from the road and rail corridor. But it's probably just worth saying each scheme would seek separate planning powers for construction and operation. We're making sure, though, as I say, by talking to Highways England, we capitalise on those efficiencies that having the two schemes along a single alignment would give. Alignment 1 performs better than Alignment 2 in terms of environmental impacts. It's more affordable than Alignment 2, and it does offer benefits in housing and growth opportunities, as you'll have seen from our report. And we've compared it with a reference design, which we refer to as Alignment 8, which I'm going to go on to talk about in a minute. Alignment 1, compared with that reference design, is about 310 to 340 million cheaper, so it's more affordable. So if we move to the next slide, which is Alignment 8. This doesn't follow the A428 corridor at all. It most closely represents the Option E route, and for this reason it's become our reference alignment against which we've measured everything else. It's also the shortest route between Bedford and Cambridge. Alignment 8 connects stations in Thamesford and Camborne South. It avoids the A428, as I say, throughout its length, but it passes south of Ravensden and Roxton, viaducts over the A421 and the A1 trunk roads and the River Great Ouse, passes Brickhill Country Park, and north of Cambridge passes near a sewage works and crosses the East Coast Main Line, where again we construct a station. Then the alignment curves to pass south of Abbottsley, passes between Great Grandon and Eltisley, and then curves south to pass between Caxton and Camborne, and obviously we'd create a further station at Camborne, but to the south of Camborne. We then continue southeast, getting my directions right. We then continue southeast, we pass Bourne, west of Caldecote, then east of Kingston and to the west of Toft, and it would join other alignments that we've talked about at the Eversdens. So again, we've benchmarked other alignments against this one. We've concluded that this alignment actually was the most expensive option at between 2.3 and 2.5 billion, partly because quite a lot of it is on viaducts, and environmentally it doesn't perform as well as some of the other options that we're looking at. So then if we move on to route alignment 6. So route alignment 6 connects stations at St Neots and Camborne South. It's between 270 and 300 million cheaper to build than alignment 8, and it does perform better than alignment 8 environmentally as well. In terms of journey time, it's about the same as alignment 8 and offers the quickest journey times between Bedford and Cambridge. Again, between Clapham Green and the A1, the alignment follows a similar route to the first alignment, to alignment 1, passes just north of Black Parrot roundabout on a viaduct, and then includes a station with East Coast Main Line, again near St Neots. From there, it's going to have to cross under the A428 scheme and would pass south of Abbottsley. And obviously building a bridge to carry the newly constructed road, the A428, over the railway is going to be disruptive. So we're having to work with Highways England there to look at how we could minimise that disruption. And of course, the A428 in planning terms is a bit ahead of our scheme. It's a couple of years ahead, so it would be quite difficult for them to make provision for the railway at this stage. This route continues east towards Camborne. Again, further station at Camborne South, and then follows the same alignment as alignment 8 beyond that. And then finally, if we move on to alignment 9, which is the one we're calling the purple route, alignment 9 is, again, it's the second of the two what we've described in our report as emerging preferences for this section of the route. Alignment 9 is cheaper than the reference alignment 8. It's about 120, 130 million cheaper. And although it's more expensive than alignment 1, I think it's certainly the best alignment to serve both Thamesford and Camborne North. So this alignment again goes from Clapham Green, south of Ravensden and Roxton, viaduct over the A421 and the A1, as you can see there, and the Grey Twos. A new station at Tempsford continues north along the A428 corridor. As with alignment 6, it's having to cross under the A428 scheme in order to get onto that alignment. And again, so we'd have to build a bridge underneath the A428. As I say, we'd follow that route north to a station north of Camborne. We'd attempt to align our design with the road scheme as much as we can, as with the others. And then to the east of Camborne, we'd follow the same route as some of the other schemes through Caldercote, Hardwick and Toft. And just finally, a word on the integration with the A428 scheme. So, you know, we've drawn up our proposals to take a worst case position, which assumes no integration with the two schemes. But you know, what we're doing in practice is to look at how we can work with Highways England. They're another government arm's length body, and we're working quite closely with them already to look at how we can minimise the impacts of both the construction phase as well as the longer term impacts of the scheme, and gain some efficiencies from having two schemes in a similar corridor. So that's the 5 route options. They're all feasible. They all offer a different series of benefits. We've talked in the document about our preferences, but really we'd like to hear yours, and we'd like to understand what you think of the 5 routes that we've brought to you in this consultation. So moving on to the next slide, please. I'd like, just before we conclude the presentation, just give you a little bit more information about the approach to Cambridge. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that the route that the blue line on this plan, the route into Cambridge from the south and the west is the route we've been promoting in all of the documents. We've talked about it at length in the documents, but I think, you know, as you'll know, many people have been contacting us to say that they'd like us to look again at the potential of the route which enters Cambridge from the other direction, from the north. And so we have done that in preparation for this consultation, and in fact we're about to publish a further fact sheet on both the north and the south routes and the comparison between the two. So a northern route, you know, is technically feasible. What we've looked at is how well it compares with the proposed southern route, both operationally and its impact in terms of its impact on the environment, and on land and properties in the area. So a northern route would cross the A14 between Bar Hill and Girton, could possibly have a station at Northstowe or Oakington, and it would join the West Anglia main line south of Waterbeach Station, and then it would continue into Cambridge along that line. If we go on to the next slide, what we've shown there is a comparison between the two. You know, in terms of length, they're both pretty similar. The northern route would take slightly longer to get to Cambridge, mainly because the track speed on the West Anglia line is slower. But the northern route would need more bridge structures, more properties would be in close proximity to the railway. And I guess, you know, crucially for us, we're trying to avoid taking properties to construct the railway, but on this northern approach, because we'd need to widen the railway into Cambridge itself, it would probably require in the region of between 39 and 84 properties. I know that's a big range, but we are looking at that in more detail at the moment to just understand what that amounts to in terms of numbers of property affected. A further point that's probably worth noting that's not directly mentioned on here is that to access Cambridge South Station, which, as you may know, our colleagues in Network Rail are proposing at the moment, we'd need to run the service right through Cambridge Station on a widened railway down to the new station, where trains would need to turn around. That's not ideal. Obviously, trains do change direction, but it's certainly not in line with the design that Network Rail had produced for that station, as we'd need some terminating platforms there. So we would like your views on the northern approach into Cambridge, as well as the preferred route that we're taking to the south. And you know, again, we'd welcome your feedback on that. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, please. I'm now going to hand over to Jorn just to explain to you a little about why we're consulting with you on property compensation issues at this stage. So, Jorn, over to you, please.
Thank you, Ian. Yep. So my name's Jörn Pace. I'm a land and property manager at East West Rail. We also have some other members of the land team on the call this afternoon to help any questions you may have. So one of the key roles of the land and property team is to consult with landowners who could be potentially affected by the scheme and keep them updated on the proposals as they develop from this early stage. Inevitably, with a project of this size and nature, the scheme does have land requirements. And as part of our development consent order application, which is likely to be sometime between 2022 and 2024, we will be seeking powers for compulsory purchase. Compulsory purchase, however, would be our last resort after other means of attempting to reach an agreement with a landowner. And at this stage, we don't know for certain the land and property which will be needed. We will be able to provide more information by the next round of consultation. Prior to the launch of this consultation, we wrote to landowners whose land and property could be potentially required by the route alignments to inform them of the proposals. And this encouraged the landowners to get in contact with our specialist land team to give them further information about the scheme, to discuss the project timeline and answer any questions they have. And through speaking to landowners and gaining feedback, it will also help us understand the land use and how we can keep our negative impact as minimal as possible. On schemes such as these, at the point of a DCO submission, those landowners who own properties within the line of the proposed railway route who are unable to sell their property at market value are affected by what's known as statutory blight, and they'll be able to submit a statutory blight notice asking us to buy their property. We recognise, though, that that's later in the programme, which is why we're consulting on a discretionary purchase scheme, the need to sell scheme. And if introduced, this would provide support to those who have a pressing need to sell and would be introduced at the preferred route alignment announcement point expected later this year. The other key difference between the two being that the need to sell scheme wouldn't be limited to the land within the line of the railway. We're looking for feedback on what people think about this and if it is the right mitigation. There's further information on our website within a section focused on land and property, and that contains a number of guides on such as the need to sell scheme, blight, compulsory purchase and compensation. There are feedback forms which are encouraging people to return back and details on how to get into contact with us. We have a dedicated team who can talk to landowners about their concerns and answer any questions. I'll now pass back to Hannah, who will discuss the consultation further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the consultation, so where do we go from here? So what we've done today is we've gone through some of the detail of the options in the area that we're specifically focusing on today. This won't be the only time that we do these kind of webinar sessions. As I said at the beginning, because of the nature of these sessions, it's quite difficult to have a sort of a truly discursive session. So I would definitely encourage you, if you've got questions that we don't manage to work through today, to get in touch during the live chat events as well. They're very good. It means that we can put you in touch directly with our experts and have a little bit more back and forth. But we will go into Q&A shortly to answer many questions. We're going to have another set of sessions in May, and we're having a look now to see how we can, if there are any changes we can make to the format to make sure that we can kind of talk to more people during those. The fact that you're on this call means that you've probably already found the consultation documents on the website, but I would definitely, if you haven't already had a look at the consultation report, the technical report, the consultation summary that would have come through your front door quite recently, to go and have a look at those. We've got a community hub and a resource centre there, and we've also got a document library which has got information on our approach to various aspects of the project, such as accessibility or it means you can kind of, apologies for that, means you can kind of move around in a space that feels a bit more familiar and it's a bit more interactive. So thank you so much for that. I can already see we've had a couple of questions through about the format of these things, and I would say to the person that asked if there is an evening consultation, I would say there is. We've put a session in tomorrow night, which is if you haven't already received an invitation to that, do let us know. We'll make sure that you get that, but it will be on the website. Obviously, all public events are on the website. Tomorrow's session, no, we want to make sure that people have the same information. So that person that asked if tomorrow's evening session will contain any different or additional information. No, I think it might actually even be the same speaker lineup as well. So it'll be very similar to the event that we're holding today. As I say, if you want to have more in-depth discussions, you can definitely go towards our live chat events, although we will try and get through all the questions asked in the sessions. So how can you get involved? Well, we've spoken about most of the ways that people can get involved already. So we've got those virtual consultation rooms, we've got the online public event that you're in one at the moment, and the live chat sessions too. We have a phone line, the 0330 number. You can also email us, contact@eastwestrail.co.uk for more information. And there's a wealth of resource on the website that you can go to and have a look at. I think that now's a really good opportunity actually for the team to answer some of the other questions that are coming in. So at this point, I'll hand over to the other Hannah on the call and say, Hannah, what are the questions that we've got coming in?
Thank you very much, Hannah, and thank you all for your questions that we've received so far. We've had, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to group them into themes as we've had over 200 questions so far. So please excuse if your exact question isn't answered, but hopefully it's covered by the theme. Firstly, I'm going to come to a question on electrification from the onset. Could one of the
should I pick that one up? So, you know, we're really clear we want to be a net zero carbon railway. I've literally just come off a call discussing some really interesting sort of electrification technology that's being sort of piloted in other parts of Europe. So we're really interested in how you develop an electrified or a low carbon railway. But there are, you know, just from the conversation that I've been having today, there are a number of options for the way that you might do that. What we don't want to do just yet is, you know, sort of lock in a particular form of technology, but make sure we properly understand what the options are, because technology is moving pretty fast. So we're doing the work in terms of looking at what the options might be, so that we can then go to government with a really clear set of options and get government's kind of endorsement to proceed in a particular direction. Now, what we have done is for the Oxford to Milton Keynes service that we're introducing in 2024, 2025, what we've said is that so we can get that connectivity up and running as quickly as possible, we will introduce an interim rolling stock fleet. But the reason we're doing something that's on an interim basis is so that by the time we get to introducing the full Oxford-Cambridge service, we can actually have a new fleet of rolling stock that takes a different approach. So we're looking at what the right options to do and to take are, but that's why we're, you know, you're not seeing a firm commitment to full overhead line electrification. And we've heard actually from quite a number of people in this consultation that they're not sure they want full overhead line electrification because of the visual impact of it. So there are a number of different trade-offs here that we need to take into account, and that's why we're sort of doing the work. And if we can find a technology solution, then that's what we'll do.
Thanks so much. I will just jump in here as well, because I was introducing everyone at the beginning of the session to say that the gentleman you just heard speaking is Will Gallagher. He's our strategy director. I think some people on this call have probably met him before, but if not, that's the additional speaker that's just jumped onto the call there. So thanks very much, Will, for jumping on the call and for jumping in to that answer. Brilliant. I'll hand back to other Hannah. Where are we with questions now?
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Will, for your answer. The next set of questions that have come up are around the train times. So what train times do we expect for both passenger and freight to run from, and when will they stop? And also a question around ticket prices. When will this kind of information be available? Maria, can I come to you on those questions, please? Thank you.
Sure, thanks Hannah, and good afternoon everybody. My name is Maria Cliff, I'm Head of Operations, and one of my responsibilities is developing the timetable for East West Rail. As Will mentioned, we are introducing our services across 3 different connection stages, and one of the activities that my team is working on right now is developing the timetable for the full route from Oxford to Cambridge. So in terms of the hours of operation of the railway, we are looking at potential times, depending on the day of the week, between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning up until between 11 p.m. and midnight. And those are predominantly passenger services. But from a freight perspective, where the route exists today, so particularly in the Oxford area, between Bletchley and Bedford, and at the Cambridge end, there is some existing freight. There are existing freight paths, but the utilisation of those paths is mixed, depending on the demand from the freight companies themselves. We intend to retain those freight paths so that those services that exist today will continue to run. But as part of the development of the timetable, we need to understand if the freight paths can exist between the passenger services that we're committed to delivering. So I hope that answers the first part of the question. Hannah, in terms of tickets and ticket pricing, we absolutely want to be able to offer really good value for money for the future customers on this railway, and we are developing our ticketing strategy and looking at some quite innovative ways of making sure that frequent travellers and repeat travellers are offered discounts for repeat travel, and ways that we can ensure that we allow people to come back and experience a better service every time that they travel with us. So there's overall reform happening at the moment across the rail industry in terms of easier fares for all. So the Department for Transport is looking at wider reform, and we're in close conversation with them to make sure that whatever we implement on East West Rail is in line with wider policy. But some exciting things to come on ticketing, which I hope to be able to share with you at the next round of consultation. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. Next up, we had some questions on the land policies, especially the blight policy, stating that it doesn't go far enough for the railway where it passes with next to houses within 150 metres. Jorn, can I just come to you to?
Yeah, we can. I can discuss the policies we're consulting on. I mean, in developing our proposals, we've aimed to keep our impact as minimal as possible. That's why, as you read through our consultation documents, you'll see many of our emerging preferred routes or options cause comparatively less impact to landowners and communities. But we recognise that the consultation is difficult news, and the policy we are consulting on, the need to settle scheme, might not work for all. But we are at an early stage, and this consultation offers a chance to feed back your thoughts on what discretionary purchase schemes we should have in place. It's an early stage in the project for us to be able to kind of offer other policies or schemes. So please do offer your feedback on what you'd like to see in terms of those schemes, and we'll take it on board and assess further. Generally, we have a commitment to not take any unnecessary land, and that's a requirement for the DCO application, and it will be assessed during that process. And we'll abide by the statutory compensation code, and that might apply to land where we need land permanently for the railway, where it's needed temporarily, or the loss in value of land adjacent to the scheme. And in that latter instance, compensation might be available through what's called a Part 1 claim. So please do read the leaflets further, feed us back your thoughts, and get in touch if we can answer any other questions. Back to you, Hannah.
Sorry, Hannah McCarthy, are you there?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Apologies. The next question I was going to come to is we've had a number of people asking about our emerging preferred options in terms of 1 and 9, and which one is our preferred option. Ian, can I come to you on that question, please?
Yes, okay, sure. So we don't have a single preference at this stage. What we have done, as I say in the documents, is we've identified 2 routes, which are broadly similar, other than at the western end one goes via St Neots and one goes via Tempsford, and then obviously their route into Bedford is slightly different. But we've yet to identify a preferred route alignment, and indeed that's the purpose of this consultation, is to do that. We won't be identifying a preferred route alignment until later in the year, once we've analysed all of the feedback from this consultation exercise and done some further work on the routes. But at the moment, as I said when I went through the slides earlier on, our emerging preferences are for both of the options that follow the A428 corridor up to a station in Camborne North. Okay, Hannah, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. On that note, would one of the team, maybe Will or Ian again, be able to answer? We've had a number of questions around Route E and how that was chosen and the costs associated.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to pick that one up. So look, we did, in 2019 our first non-statutory consultation, which had Route E as one of 5 route option areas, sort of ranging from A to E. Some of them served south of Bedford and went, either sort of straight across towards Cambridge, or went up towards sort of Tempsford and beyond. Some went through Bedford Midland itself. So there was a full range of options that was put on the table at that point. And when we considered all of those options, and we took into account the feedback from over sort of 7,000 people who responded to our consultation, then we drew the conclusion that Route E was our preferred route option. And there were a number of reasons for that. They were driven by the 15 assessment factors that we use and that we're still using today in terms of what are the things that influence our decisions. So capital cost, operating costs, impact on the environment, ability to support economic growth, a full range of sort of 15 different factors. And Route E perform the best when looking at those factors. Now, I do know that people have been raising some concerns about how the costs of Route E developed. We're really clear that when we made our decision, we did so on the basis of consistently prepared costs, and we have published all of the cost information that went into building up the analysis in terms of Route E compared to the other routes. So that is live on our website right now. As I say, we have set out in quite a bit of detail, in the last technical report that we published in 2020, why route option E was the one that we selected. But as I say, it was driven off the last consultation, the 15 assessment factors that we published at the time.
Thank you, Will. The the next question I was hoping to come to is around the A428. A number of people have asked why we can't follow that all the way to Black Cat. Is that Will? Could you pick that one up? Or
so you go ahead.
Or Ian, sorry.
Why don't I think if we've got Ian, why don't you pick that up, or if Paul's on the line as well, because I know he's got some information about that route.
Apologies, I think A421 even, not A428.
Okay. Yeah, that's a slightly different question, because obviously we are following the A428 over that section between Camborne and Black Cat in several of the options.
I think
Will probably goes back to you, actually, because I think this is pertinent to why we chose option E rather than, that's the thing. I think the question is asking why we're going into Bedford, essentially.
Yeah, so we obviously looked at the route option B, which is the area, which is, I think, the one that is probably closest to the sort of A421 route. But when we looked at the sort of cost of that option, it actually didn't perform as well as route E. When we looked at the environmental impacts of that option, it didn't perform as well as route E. So there were a variety of reasons that went into the sort of considerations. But as we say, both on cost and on in terms of the environment, it simply didn't perform as well.
Thank you, Will. We've had a number of questions about the viaducts and requirements for embankments, and also questions about mock-ups that have been produced, not by East West Rail. Will, are you able to speak to those questions, please?
I can probably provide some information, and then I'll sort of pass to Paul as well. So I think I think the first thing to say is that what we are presenting at the moment is a reasonable worst case scenario, because we're at the point in our design development where we are consulting on this quite early, and therefore there are options for us as we continue to develop our design, which I guess is called sort of value management, where you look at opportunities to minimize sort of impact, and also, because building embankments is it costs money, where there are things that we can do that actually also reduce the cost of this as well, because we don't want to build more embankments than we need to. So I think it is just worth saying that at the outset, that what we've provided is the reasonable worst case scenario. So our aim is to improve upon that sort of between now and when we get to the DCO. I think the next thing to say is that what we've seen reported on social media and in some in some sort of traditional media as well are things like we've got 7 kilometers of embankment all in one stretch. Now that is simply not the case, or we've got 7 kilometers of viaduct all in one go, and again that is simply not the case. We're talking about stretches of viaduct that don't exceed really more than sort of 450 meters, or in terms of embankment don't run for more than, I think, about 1.8 kilometers, and certainly what they are not doing is running at a consistent height of 10 meters all the way through that area. There'll be areas where there are embankments and they are up to 10 meters high, but there will also be areas where there are cuttings or where the railway is at grade, so that means at ground level. So over that stretch of journey, really from coming out of Camborne North, sort of through to where we join the King's Cross line. There is a combination of sort of at grade, viaduct and embankment, and we are, so I think it is important sort of to recognise that. What I would say though is that we do recognise that we will be building some embankments, and our job, as I've said before, is to reduce those where we can, and also to take steps that make them sort of more sort of consistent or that fit in better with the sort of local environment in terms of landscaping, in terms of trees, in terms of a variety of things that we do that will, that, as I say, combined with reducing the heights of these where we can, sort of will improve the impact, such that some of the sort of CGI that we have seen, as I say, we struggle to recognise both the sort of the gradient of the slope, its proximity to people's houses, some of those things, as I say, just we don't think sort of are borne out either by our long section diagram or, for that matter, by the route alignments that we have published. So I think it is just worth sort of making that clear.
I think before we go in, I think I'm still seeing questions coming through in the last couple of minutes around the cost information of Route E, and I do want to absolutely clarify that information is available on the website. It's published on the document library section of our website, and if I can find the correct link, I'll try and ping that out. But it's there on the cost on the in the library section of our website. Just in case anyone missed that, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Will. The next question I was going to come to on freight. We've had a couple of questions around what the frequency and when freight might be on the new line.
Do you want me to pick that one up, Hannah? Or Maria, if Maria is available, Maria, you answer it.
So I think in relation to freight, we are predominantly a passenger railway, but we have to aim to balance out the needs of the local community and the impacts of noise and vibration and emissions that freight operation brings with it, and the environmental impacts against the potential revenue and modal shift as well that is brought by freight operation. And it's part of our key considerations. We are developing our freight strategy and talking to the freight operating companies and Network Rail to understand what the wider national policy is for freight in the UK. And it is very much an emerging picture. But in terms of hours of operation, the hours that I mentioned just a few minutes ago are for passenger and freight, so applicable to both customer and freight operation. So in terms of freight operating through the night, we do not propose currently for any freight to be in operation during the night hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. The next question I was going to come to is relating to the fact that there's no stations past Camborne. So a number of questions on what are the community benefits for those who live past Camborne.
Should I sort of jump in on this one? So I think we should be honest that for some people who are living where the railway goes but who are not immediately proximate to one of our stations, that the benefits are not as obvious as if you live close to Cambridge South or in the Camborne area, and we do recognise that. I think there are a few things sort of to bear in mind. The first is, the huge economic benefit that comes from the railway, both in terms of the prosperity of the whole area, because it creates, it helps businesses grow, it helps, it makes businesses more productive as well, because it's easier for people to get around. Those things are important, but also the very fact of building a railway creates employment and prosperity as well. We're currently, on our constructing between Bicester and Bletchley, we've created over 1,500 new jobs in terms of that project. Also, as part of the things that we develop, and that we're very keen to hear your views on, is the way we can, with the railway, provide sort of active travel options, whether that's for cycling or for those sorts of things, to make it easier to get, around the local area and also to and from our stations. It's also worth pointing out that we do know that the roads that run between sort of Camborne and Cambridge, that run between Camborne and Royston to get onto the sort of the London train there as well, are very congested, and the opportunities that East West Rail brings to reduce road congestion, because people can travel by train as well. So there are a set of options, but it is, one of the things, as I say, we're mindful of, is that some people will see probably more short-term disruption than the immediate benefits that are obvious. And it's one of the reasons why we set out in the consultation some of the thinking that we're doing about the construction phase and how we work with communities locally to, one, mitigate the impact, and where we can, sort of bring some benefits as well. But I think that probably sort of summarises where we are on.
Thank you, Will. I'm conscious of time, but there's a few more questions I think we need to cover off. So we've had a number of questions relating to Bedford and why we're not reconsidering going south of Bedford.
If you want me to again to pick that one up, I don't want to turn this into the Will show, but we obviously we looked at the analysis in relation to the route options, at the last consultation. We obviously have a process of continuing to back check the decisions that we take through this process. So if anything does come to light that would lead us to change our decision in terms of whether we serve Bedford Midland or the south of Bedford, then those are, there's a proper process by which we have to take that new information into account. And if that means we change our decision, it means we change our decision. We want to build this railway in the right place. I've seen some of the questions they were asking quite specifically about why are we not using the old Varsity line. Well, that is because in a number of places, it has been built on, so there isn't a clear run along the old Varsity line. There are a number of things that are built on the Varsity line, including schools, including houses, including the observatory. So there's a range of things that get in the way. Also, what's happened, on some of the formations that have been left sort of disused after the railway was closed, have become sort of priority environmental habitats as well. So, actually by using the old Varsity line, it may be that it actually has quite a negative environmental impact as well. So we don't think that the old Varsity line is the right option. Looking at the south of Bedford more generally, again, the analysis hasn't pointed us to there. The impact of going south of Bedford, has some environmental impacts. Also, the way the sort of development around Wixham's is happening, it's likely to have an impact upon quite a number of homes as well if we were to take a route south of Bedford. So there are a range of factors that do militate against that south of Bedford option and do support the reason we're heading into Bedford Midland itself. So again, hopefully that provides some information as to why we are heading to Bedford Midland, but also the process that we have for back checking, in case new information comes to light regarding sort of routes that would push you to the south.
Thank you, Will. I think just to cover kind of one final area, which we've received a couple of questions on, in terms of our environmental approach, I wonder if, Gavin, you can just speak to what the work we're doing and when we'll have more information.
Yeah, sure. So we've been using environmental assessment factors to consider the route options. This has been factored into the decision making that Ian and Will have been describing. Going forward, we'll be going into formal environmental impact assessment, which will result in an environmental statement, which will be delivered as part of our DCO application for our planning application in the next year or so. So we're in the early stages, essentially, of the environmental impact assessment process. We have a programme of survey. We're out there doing ecological and various types of survey across the routes to gather baseline information and inform our decision making. So that information has started to become made public. We've made our GIS mapping available, and we're in consultation with the various ecological and environmental stakeholders and regulatory bodies to get their views and take on board their ideas about how we should assess the impact. So a good deal of work is underway, and the results of that work will be made public going forward.
Thanks very much, Gavin. I think at this time I'm going to hand back to Hannah Staunton, who's just maybe going to cover off a couple more questions quickly before wrapping up. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. So we have got questions that we didn't get round to in the session. I'm aware that we've run a little bit over. I think that's fine, and thank you everyone for staying on. We have got the session tomorrow. As I said, we've got a wealth of live chat sessions as well, which you can log on to. You can email us. You can come to events that we'll be putting on in May as well. So please do keep communicating with us over the consultation. We will be looking at the questions that have come in today and seeing how we can respond. We intend to publish more information on the website, just clarifying some points that have come in and just highlighting the frequently asked questions, so look out for that. I would highlight, just because we've had questions on a few specific areas already, that we've got in our published documentation on the website our approach to COVID. So we've had some questions about whether people's potential changes to working patterns might impact how we view the route, after COVID and after we've all been working from home for a while. So there's a fact sheet on that on the website. We've had people asking about what we would do to mitigate impacts of noise and vibration and other construction issues. There's a fact sheet about that on the website as well. We've had some people asking about the assessment factors that Will mentioned earlier. What are the 15 assessment factors and how do we use them? There's a fact sheet about that on the website as well. We've had people asking about how we intend to work with other modes of transport and how we sort of integrate, particularly with things like cycling and walking and that kind of stuff. There's a fact sheet about that on the website as well. That one's called active travel, which actually on reflection is a slightly rail industry way of saying that, so I might look at renaming that. We've also got our approach to accessibility and inclusion. We've had a few questions in today about how we will be sort of making sure we accommodate that the line is accessible for everyone that wants to use it. So there is a lot of information on the website already. So if you do have specific questions on those areas that haven't been answered today, please do go and have a look at the consultation page on the website and see if there's something there that can answer the question for you. The most important thing for us, well, one of the most important things for us, we've spoken today about what the consultation is about. We've given you some information on the exact proposals and plans for the area that we're looking at today for this area, and then we've tried to answer as many questions as we could get through and given you an indication of where you can get information and where you can find out what you need to know to be able to respond to the consultation. The next point for us and the next mark for us is really making sure that people do respond to the consultation, because it's those formal responses that will allow us to feed into the teams that are designing and planning the route, and will allow us to really understand what it is that people in the local communities are thinking about the line. So ping on to the next slide. So we're very keen to understand what people think about these emerging proposals, and that we get that information in a structured way. That really helps us understand. It also helps us create the report, and there'll be a report based on the consultation, which will be an overview of all of the themes and issues that have been raised in the consultation by both the public and by stakeholders. So if you go onto our website, there are feedback forms there, which you can submit directly through the website. You can email us at consultation.eastwestrail.co.uk with those feedback forms. You can print them out and send them directly to Free Post East West Rail. For those people that aren't comfortable online, they can phone the 0330 number or ask someone to do that for them, and have documents sent out to them. So we can have the feedback form sent out in paper copy for people to use, and again they can just pop that in the post. Free Post East West Rail will come directly to us. That goes to our offices, and we've got people in our offices now who are waiting to open up the responses they come in. As I said, every single response that comes in gets analysed. Every single question that comes in gets analysed as well, and we'll be publishing the results of that in a report similar to the report that we did following the last consultation as well. So please, if there's one thing that you take away from this as an action, I suppose, it's please do remember to respond to the consultation, because we do need that information in. So what next? I think I've said we've got other events planned, we've got live chat events planned. Please do that. We're going to take away all the questions and comments that have come in the bar, and work that into the ongoing work in our teams to work through the rest of the consultation. Please do stay in touch. Please do keep talking to us. We will be back. We've got another event tomorrow night for this area as well. And thank you very much for your time. I'm aware that time is a precious commodity, so I'm very grateful for you for coming to this event, and for the feedback that you're already giving us through the event today. So thank you very much. And I think goodbye from myself and goodbye from the team here.